Good evening, Bahamas. Coming up tonight on our news.
The F&M chairman responds to Butler Turner and her call for opposition forces to unite. The story coming up.
F&M Deputy Leader Peter Turnquest weighs in on the fate of the Rebel 7. That story straight ahead.
Former Deputy Prime Minister Brent Simonet weighs in on recent boundary cuts. That story is coming up straight ahead.
One man is dead and an infant recovering after a shooting at Scott Street Thursday night. Plus, our news gets a little dirty with Bahama Health. Welcome to our news and thanks for joining us. I'm Christina McNeil. Topping news tonight, Free National Movement Chairman Sidney Collie says the party has made several attempts to unify opposition forces, but to no avail, and has decided to move on with its 2017 campaign. He told our news today that if there's any joining of forces, others will have to run under the F&M's banner. Kyle Joaquin reports.
The F&M chairman says if any opposition force wishes to join up with the F&M, they better approach them now, as time is winding down.
The F&M cannot afford, for the benefit of this generation and the future generation, to pussyfoot around with this election.
Which is why Collie says the party has moved on from trying to unify opposition forces in an attempt to defeat the PLP in the upcoming general election. Opposition leader Loretta Butler Turner on Wednesday said the only possible way to beat the PLP this go-around is for there to be two choices, the PLP and one unified opposition, rather than the numerous parties there are now. Collie said, frankly, he doesn't see that happening.
I don't see it happening, and I will not say that serious efforts have not been made to various opposition forces to try to reach an accommodation. To date, that has not happened.
But he said it's not too late. He said splinter parties still have the opportunity to join forces with the F&M as long as they understand that their contribution would be under the F&M's banner, not a coalition.
It's the ninth hour. If opposition forces want to join up with the F&M, in a serious attempt under the F&M to overthrow this government by the ballot, then the F&M will listen. But we are not going to sit around and wait. We are moving ahead with our agenda.
The F&M has only 4 candidates left to be ratified. Collie said that will happen within the next week.
And once that is done, the door is closed. We are going into a general election as the Free National Movement.
He said the party is too established with a good track record to match to sit around and wait for other parties to pitch ideas at the last minute.
The Free National Movement, as a major political force, has been around since 1970. We have a distinguished history. Every election since that time, we have fielded a full slate of candidates. We have had 3 non-consecutive governments, and this time around, that is what we are about.
Reporting for our news, I'm Kyle Joaquin.
Well, Free National Movement Deputy Leader Peter Turnquest says he holds no ill will toward the Rebel 7 MPs who ousted F&M leader Dr. Hubert Minnis as leader of the official opposition last December. While talks of a possible reconciliation have swirled for weeks, Turnquest didn't rule it out, but says that would be solely up to the party. Jasmine Brown reports.
Turnquest says while he's not personally opposed to the Rebel 7, it's a matter that's currently out of his hands.
Well, personally, I don't have any difficulty with anybody. I mean, anybody that knows me, that I'm an easygoing guy, and I can be angry at you today and love you tomorrow. So, as far as I'm concerned, I don't have any personal or professional difficulties with any of these individuals.
Last month, Minnis told our news he is not ruled out forgiving, forgetting, and reuniting with those MPs, as he insisted anything is possible. Dr. Minnis has faced intense criticism since becoming leader of the party in 2012. Long Island MP Loretta Butler Turner attempted to unseat him twice, but lost on one occasion and pulled out of the race the second time. She and 6 other F&M MPs eventually wrote a letter to the Governor General, resulting in Minnis being ousted as leader of the official opposition. Former Prime Minister Hubert Ingraham has called on Minnis, Butler Turner, and other members of the so-called Rebel 7 to put their differences aside or face the possibility of the Progressive Liberal Party winning the next election. When asked if there was any chance of that happening, Turnquest had this response.
We all take action sometimes that we regret. We haven't gotten to that point where we're having those kind of discussions.
Turnquest says there was not much else he could say as the matter is still making its way through the F&M's tribunal.
As you know, there is a disciplinary procedure that's been initiated. That process is ongoing. And so to the extent that that is happening, there's really not much I can say about that, but I suppose that any suggestions for a resolution would have to go through that process, and that tribunal will come back and make some suggestions, and the party will then have to take a look at that.
Reporting for our news, I'm Jasmine Brown.
The recent Boundaries Commission report has received both backlash from members of the opposition and praise from those in the current administration. Today, former Deputy Prime Minister Brent Simonet called the report gerrymandering at its finest. Giorgio Bain tells us more.
Former Deputy Prime Minister Brent Simonet says the effects of recent boundary cuts could run deeper than most expect. According to Simonet, the next few weeks could see the results of utter chaos. Simonet asserted that besides the obvious setbacks of the Boundaries Commission report, the part that he found most insulting was the extreme lateness of the report that proves that Prime Minister Perry Christie is fearful about the upcoming general election.
The lateness is a serious issue that either you're scared, you're incompetent, you want to try and win this election, you're desperate. Any of those words apply to Mr. Christie.
According to Simonet, a whole heap of trouble has now been created for the parliamentary registrar, who seemingly has already faced several issues when it comes to getting persons registered. Simonet says that this is the first time he has witnessed such elaborate constituency cuts. Simonet says the fact that many have still not been able to physically collect their voters' cards speaks volume of the confusion the cuts have caused.
Traditionally, what you try to do in boundaries committees is move a whole polling division so it can be done on the computer, like a spreadsheet or whatever, and you just move, or everyone in polling division number 6 just gets picked up and moved. So that's creating a problem. You went to register, you got a receipt. You never got your voter's card. So now that all of those voters' cards have to be issued, some 80-odd thousand or 100,000, whatever the number is, 100,000, that produces a administrative dilemma.
At the end of the day, the only thing he can see happening now is chaos.
If it had been done on time, the time lapse between the Boundaries Commission report and the election would have been long enough that this could have been done on a seemly basis. So, if nothing else, at its lowest, the lateness of Mr. Christie has given a state of chaos.
Simonet, who was the former MP of the St. Anne's constituency, says that constituency and the Fox Hill constituency have received some of the most intricate cuts he has ever seen, and that the current Fox Hill MP's reasoning for why certain areas were added to Fox Hill does not make any sense.
Mr. Fred Mitchell said, well, he promised in 19-something he would move them. Well, he was in government while they did the last boundary changes. He didn't do it then. So why now does he all of a sudden think that he's going to fulfill a promise he made in that don't hold water?
Simonet says he will offer some advice to Christie, and that is to call election as late as possible.
Mr. Christie, in order to ensure fairness, should call the election date as late as possible to allow the administrative process to happen. Also to allow people to campaign.
Reporting for our news, I'm Giorgio Bain.
Well, days after voter registration issues were raised in the House of Assembly, one concerned citizen is stepping up to voice his own frustrations with the process. Taxi and tour operator Howard LaRoda says he has been turned away from registering on more than one occasion because he refuses to swear to the department. LaRoda says it's against his Christian beliefs.
I gave them the documents they asked for, passport, my old voter's card. I even have my NIB card. I showed them all of that. And they checked on the register to where I live and all of that. And they said, is it here? And I said, fine, yes, it is. Then they tell me after I do all of that, I must raise my hand. I say, for what? They say, well, you have to take an oath or you have to swear. I said, I am a believer of the Bible and the God of the Bible. And he tell me not to swear by man or by stars or by moon or sun.
He adds that he has been voting since the 1980s and has never had an issue with not swearing in, as he was allowed to affirm his information.
I've voted in this country for the last 38 years. This is the first time I had to go through this. In the court of law, when I went to give a witness for a case, it was fine with the magistrate for me to affirm.
Our news team reached out to Parliamentary Commissioner Sherlyn Hall, who says he was not aware of that particular case. However, he indicated that he planned on looking into the matter. Hall went on to confirm that the law allows voter affirmation for those who do not want to swear to the information. LaRota says at this point he is totally frustrated with the process.
Anybody in the same situation I'm in, speak up, come forward. I've heard Dr. Bernard Nordett said on the radio, they need to stop harassing Bahamians. That's my old corner boy. I want them to stop harassing Bahamians. I am one of them. I am tired.
LaRota was not the only one to express concerns this week. In the House of Assembly on Wednesday, Tall Pines MP Leslie Miller accused some in the Parliamentary Registration Department of being drunk on power, insisting they are making it far too difficult for Bahamians to register to vote. National Security Minister Dr. Bernard Nordett also weighed in on Wednesday, adding that several of the department's workers who have made unnecessary requests to register were removed. Well, Deputy Prime Minister Brent Simonet says the entire notion of spoiling your ballot as an act of protest seems like an utter waste of time. According to Simonet, given the difficulties Bahamians endured to obtain the right to vote, he cannot fathom why one would think of such an idea.
Then there's this group that decide to spoil the ballot. That is the most asinine thing in Christendom, if I can put it that way. Because once you, it's terrible for the candidates too, because when you open that box on election day, you are going to spend hours going over whether that vote is void, and you know, we're just wasting time. If you're going to spoil your ballot, just don't vote. You know, do your protest that way, because it's the same thing.
Simonet says the entire idea is a complete waste of constitutional rights, and quite frankly, he hopes no one will waste their time doing it.
You've just wasted time going in there, but what are you going to write on it? Don't agree. What does that show at the end of the day? It may show that 10,000 people don't agree. But, yeah, so I think that's a waste of your constitutional time, rights and time.
In other news, a 1-year-old girl is in stable condition today after being shot Thursday night. One man was left dead in that shooting that occurred on Scott Street off Hospital Lane shortly after 7:30 last night. Police say a group of people were standing in front of a home when two men armed with handguns approached and fired several shots before fleeing on foot. 2 other men were injured in the shooting and remain in stable condition. Now police say 3 people are in police custody assisting with their investigations into this shooting. Still to come on our news, Team Bahamas enters the CONCACAF Beach Soccer quarterfinals. Our news tackles a dirty obstacle course. That's coming up when our news returns.